You guys have a new survey out that indicates 78% of those who responded say they are frustrated by the challenges they're facing trying to advance their careers. Can you give us the lay of the land? What are your other headlines that you think that HR professionals and companies need to know heading into 2023?
Well, thanks for having me, and you got it exactly right. The last few years have been spent talking about the Great Resignation and quiet quitting, and we think a lot of the media and really the management teams diagnosed it inaccurately. What the data is telling us is that workers want three things: pay, purpose, and pathways. But pay and purpose are being satiated at far higher levels, and that's why 78% of workers mention that deep frustration. And relatedly, 3 out of 4 workers say the top reason they'd change their job is to go to another company that would offer education and career development. That's the #1 reason.
So that's a big lure for them. I was also struck by your survey results that showed that 2/3 of the people say they want new opportunities. And of those who say they want a new position, 50% or a little more than that said they want it at their own company. So how can companies use that and do it to retain the talent they already have without going through the expense and the hassle of trying to find new employees to come in and fill empty positions?
Yeah, you got it exactly right. I think it's an outdated mindset that management needs to refresh, which is that the retention rate, even in the lowest cost restaurant today, of having your cashier walk out, that costs a company $7,000 to $10,000. It can cost $2,000 to $3,000 to instead give that cashier career development and education opportunities. And that return on investment only skyrockets as you move out of restaurants into retail, manufacturing, hospitals, healthcare, and financial services. And so the mindset shift that we're hoping more and more companies start to embrace is it's more affordable and a better decision to invest in the workers we have today than to watch them walk out the door and pay the cost.
Well, how do you do that? I mean, let me just give you an example. I've heard before that good companies that are good to their people don't move on very often. So the opportunities for advancement start to dwindle to a very narrow logjam, which is very frustrating for people who've coming into new and would like to know, well, where's the opportunity for advancement?
Yeah, so I think that logjam is true maybe in the bowels of the corporate office, but when you think about a company like Chipotle, who has doubled their retention rate by offering education and career mobility to all of their workforce, when you think about companies like JP Morgan, who are helping train the job of yesterday, the data input role, into data analysts and jobs of the future, the companies that are growing, which is much of the Fortune 500, those growth companies actually have tremendous vacancies in their frontline managerial and supervisory roles and the roles above that. And let's not forget healthcare. I mean, we work with a system today, a large one that everybody's heard of, that had to increase its recruiting budget by 40% this year alone. Wow. Because they have 6,000 job openings today.
And it just seems to me like if you're working on that scale, trying to implement educational opportunities and employee bonuses and things like that that encourage you to get the training you need to get new jobs, all of that takes time and effort and energy. Are there quick fixes to what is a problem right now?
Well, we like to think guild is the quick fix. I wrote my graduate school work on how to do this at scale after studying the Starbucks model. And our belief is that what companies need is simply a payments platform so that the worker doesn't have to pay up front for the training, which is the #1 barrier. Then you need a selection of programs. We've curated 2,500 programs around the country. And then each employee needs a coach and an advisor, because the hardest thing about being a frontline worker in America is that you can't be what you can't see. And so giving everyone the opportunity to understand what is that next step up on the career ladder or the lattice is a role that we and plenty of other organizations are really playing, but with those innovative companies that are starting to understand that career retention now needs to be the antidote to this recruitment nightmare that they've been in for a couple of years.
With your client companies, Rachel, what's the biggest hurdle that you have to overcome in order to convince them that creating these pathways, creating opportunities for training for career advancement is worthwhile?
We've been lucky in that the momentum has really shifted. There was an outdated view often held by the CFO, which was that education and training were a sunk cost. It was a benefit and it sat in the, P&L below the fold. The innovative CEOs, chief people officers, and really much of the operators at the companies we work with have realized, wait, 80% of our balance sheet is our talent. 80% of where we spend our costs is on our humans. Investing in those humans to stay and grow with the company is an investment, not a cost center. So that shift is what used to make our work quite hard as we were launching our company in 2015 to 2020, and we really had to lean into the innovative companies like the Walmarts, the Disneys, the Chipotles of the world that wanted to take a risk here. We've now proven out the data that when companies spend $1 on their employees' education and upskilling, they see $2 to $3 back in hard savings, and that is the definition of an investment.
And what are the consequences if companies are not engaging in this sort of forward thinking where career advancement is concerned?
They're losing their workers. So when you hear the companies complaining about employees leaving and often complaining about those employees in a way that speaks about them in sort of an uncertain, we don't know, the quiet quitting, they're just these, Gen Z and millennials heading out the door. When you dig into the data, it's those companies that are losing the war for talent. Those are the ones with 100, 200% turnover rates, and the ones who can't quite put a finger on why their turnover has such an aggressive movement and why they're not building diversity in their middle ranks and loyalty of their employees. I'm quite proud of the work we've done with Walmart in terms of ensuring that their Black and Latinx employees who are using the learning program are promoting within the business at a much higher rate than their Black and Latinx peers. So it really touches the whole fabric of the employee culture. But the companies that aren't doing it are certainly losing the war for talent and absolutely not seeing the improvement in the diversity that they've all committed to.
But are you trying to say that quiet quitting is not happening at the companies that have career advancement opportunities in place?
We're seeing that the companies that are investing in career opportunities have much lower turnover rates and have much higher promotion of their frontline workforce and their employees of color. We do have, that's the data we see every day.
That's pretty astonishing. What does it say too about a company that will work on the opportunities for employees to advance their careers, along with those other two very important P's that you mentioned at the top, pay and purpose?
Yeah, so when I think about it, I think that it takes that early risk, but for the companies who are investing in their pathways, they're seeing a tremendous return because the reality is pay, in 2021, the frontline workers saw greater gains in their wages than at any prior quarter in the last 40 years, right? We've had a tremendous increase in the frontline wage, but that can't continue indefinitely, especially in tight margin businesses. And so when you think about the employee proposition and what the American workforce wants from its company, there are some limits to what these companies can do on pay. Purpose, obviously, lots you can do there, but companies can define it and enhance it, but there's some limits as well. Pathways is the untapped part. There are lots of companies that 10 years ago were doing nothing in terms of education, training, and pathways, and they're just unleashing that as a new tool in their employee value proposition.
Is there a way to engage in that even if you don't have a big budget for career advancement, for retraining employees, for investing in, maybe it would be a tech school or a community college on the side? Are there opportunities as well?
Absolutely, and I think one of the big misnomers about this whole space is, especially when it's executives who think about paying $50,000 for their own kids to go to liberal arts colleges, that's a coming of age experience that they've chosen to pay for. What the frontline worker needs is typically a $2,000 to $3,000, sometimes $5,000 program that will launch their career from that hourly wage into their first-time salary as a manager, supervisor, or into the next job of the future in their job category and family. And so 73% of Americans' Fortune 1000 companies already have this budget. It's that they've been spending it really ineffectively, and most of the dollars have been going to their white collar, white male workforce in their corporate headquarters, and it's time to democratize that budget. The good news is when they do that, they also see a higher ROI.